Hello everyone. So this is just a brief video to explain how to raise a sales invoice within Xero. Just so you're aware, I am using a demo company version of Xero. So this is just to keep everybody's data obviously private and confidential. When you first log in, you will see pretty much exactly the same screen. We call this basically is the dashboard. So the dashboard is the main things that you want to see at an easy glance when you first log in. So from here, it is very easy to navigate to sales invoicing. So there's two methods in which you can raise a sales invoice. The first one is if you go to business. So if you click on it, and then if you click on invoices, this takes you to the full overview of your sales invoicing. And from here, you can see, first of all, we've got several tabs, as we call them. So the first one is all. So this is basically all sales invoices that have been raised. And this is whether they are paid, unpaid, draft, etc. So this is just basically all of them. Draft is sales invoices that you have maybe you've started to fill in, but you've not completed, so you've not approved them yet. So they sit here on your draft until you've got a chance to complete it. So say you're doing some invoicing on a night and you've broken off partway through, you don't lose what you've done. So it's still here and you can pick it up at any time. Awaiting approval is probably not overly relevant. So awaiting approval is like another step in creating the sales invoices. So say you had a bookkeeper or somebody else within your business was raising the sales invoice and it needed to be checked by you before it was sent to a customer. They would save it as awaiting approval. So it's like another step, another approval step. As I say, you're probably not going to use this very much. So awaiting payment. This is basically once your sales invoice has been raised, you've emailed it out to customer, and they all sit on here. So these are the invoices. This is probably your most important tab because these are your sales invoices that customers haven't paid yet. Okay, so these are the ones that you're going to want to keep an eye on the most, because these are the ones where your customers may need chasing for payment. Paid is exactly what it says. So that's just all of your sales invoices that have been paid. Repeating, again, is probably one that you're not going to need to use very much. So repeating is effectively if you're billing a customer a set fixed amount every month, all the time, basically each month, every month, then instead of having to create that invoice over and over again, you can create it as a repeating one, and it just saves work. But as I say, for what you're doing, that isn't something that you're going to probably be likely to need. So I won't show you how to set up repeating invoices. If you feel it is something that you need at a later date, please do ask and I can do your video to show you how to do that. But for now, I will just ignore repeating invoices. So as I said, the most important tabs you're probably going to want to use are any invoices that you've got in draft, because these are ones have not yet gone to your customer and probably need completing, and you're awaiting payment. So these are the ones that are outstanding that customer hasn't paid yet. So to create a new invoice from this screen, just above here, you've got a button that says new invoice. So all you need to do is click on new invoice. Okay, and that will take you to the invoice creation screen. Same applies if you needed to apply a credit note. So at the top here, new credit note. So again, all you need to click on it, and again, you come to the credit note creation screen. The two screens are exactly the same in terms of the format, but one is an invoice and one is a credit note. Just to note, so to go back to the sales, to the screen that I have just shown you, if you see here, invoices and sales overview, if you click on this, it takes you to a slightly different screen, which is sort of an overview screen. Okay. Really, your easiest is just go straight back to invoices from there. That can be a little bit confusing at times. As well, so if I just click on new invoice again, and if you want it to go backwards, you can also click your back button, which will take you back to the full invoicing screen. So this method is probably the longer method, and you'd probably go this way more if you were actually wanting to sort of look at what invoices had already been raised. As I say, you can create your invoices from here and your credit notes, and it's an overview. However, if you're sat there on a night and you just really quickly want to raise some sales invoices, then there is a quicker method. So you have logged into Xero, you are on your dashboard, your main screen, and instead of going to businesses here, if you go to this little plus icon, which says create new, click on it and click on invoice, it will take you straight to a new sales invoice creation screen, effectively. So this is the much faster method of creating new sales invoices. I have shown you the previous one just so you're aware and so that you can look at what sales invoices you've got, etc. But this is the much quicker method of creating a new sales invoice. So I'll show you now what details you need to complete. So this is basically your customer name. Okay, so for instance, all you need to do is start typing whoever the customer is or the contact. If you have used them before, as you can see like this one, they will come up as being a contact. And all you would need to do is click on it and it will bring in their details. However, if it's somebody new, again, just start typing their name. You'll need to type it in full. And if you can see, it says no contact found. But it does say add Joe Blog as new contact. So all you need to do is click on add Joe Blog and it has now created them as a new contact. The only thing it hasn't done is obviously add their address or any other details that you want. I won't get into that now. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Okay, so you've got your contact. Date, so that's your date of your invoice. Due date, so this is the date you're expecting to be paid. So depending on what your terms are, if it's 7 days, then 7 days later, or if it's 30 days, you can do it as 30 days. We can set up a default due date for you, so it should automatically put a due date in. But if you can just email me and let me know. So if your payment terms are 7 days, I can set it up as that, or if they're 30 days, I can set it up as 30 days. But if you let me know what that is, I can then set up the default due date. I do know some of you, I do know what the default due date is, so I will get that sorted. Xero keeps a track of invoice numbering. So it will just give it the next invoice number. If you've been running a manual invoicing system, again, we will have been putting those into Xero with you. So the invoicing numbers should just run on as we've had previously. Reference. So in terms of especially sort of like construction, heating, engineering, plumbing, etc., some of you may have a job number, which I would recommend you putting as a reference, or the address, just the first section of it. So if you're working, say, for a company where you work at various different addresses potentially for that customer, just to make it easier to identify, potentially put address in. The reference, you can decide. You don't have to put a reference in. It's completely up to you. Branding. So the branding will default to the standard. We can add into Xero any logos or branding of your template, sales invoices, etc. So whatever you need to be set up. So again, if you can just let us know what that is, we can put that into Xero for you so that your sales invoice looks exactly as you want it to look when it goes to customer. Once this is set up, you don't need to worry about it because it will automatically default to whichever it is that we've determined as your invoice, your sales invoice. Okay, so completing it. So description. So I'm going to assume to start with, this is just going to be a straight sales invoice to a customer who is the end user. So what I mean by that is that this invoice is not subject to CIS construction scheme. Okay, so in which case it is whatever you decide to put. But for example, complete works as quoted. Okay, so quantity 1. So if you just bill in the job in whole, for example, just put it as quantity 1 and the total of the job excluding VAT. Okay. Excluding VAT. Okay. It's automatically going to go to sales and it's putting 20% VAT on it. Okay. So check it at the bottom here. It's £1,000 plus VAT, so it's 1,200 in altogether. And then all you would do is press approve. So that's it, done. That is your sales invoice. Then, if you want to send it to your customer, at the top here you've got email. So press email, type in the email address, for example, and then press send. Okay, and that will then send this sales invoice to your customer. So currently with these tick boxes, it will send it as having a button where they can click on the button to download the invoice. If you want to include it as a PDF attachment so they don't have to click on a button, you can just tick that so it goes as a PDF and then just hit send. Okay, that's it, done. That sales invoice has now gone to your customer. Okay, so now you want to create another one. So we'll go plus invoice. So now we're going to send one to a customer, for example, who is a CIS contractor. So again, select your contact, date of your invoice, due date if it doesn't already put it in, reference, as you determine that you want to need, however you would like to put a reference in if needed. So if you are invoicing if you're working as a subcontractor for another contractor, then your invoice has to show CIS, and it also needs to be domestic reverse charge. So these invoices are raised slightly differently. Firstly, you need to have 2 lines. So you've got to split your labour and your materials. Okay, so first of all, you're going to have a labour line and you're going to have a material line. Okay, you can put materials and then what other information you need. So, for example, for job as quoted, and you don't necessarily have to put materials at the beginning of it, but as long as it is clear that you have two separate values. One value is for the labour element of the job and the second is for the materials. This is because CIS is only deducted from labour, okay? It isn't deducted from materials. I know some of you are very aware of this already, and I know in your head or your quotes or whatever you're doing, you know how much is labour and how much is material. The problem is that we also needs to be split in the account because it affects how the invoice is then calculated and the submission that goes to HMRC. Okay, so I can't stress how important it is that we make sure that the labour and the material element are separate on separate lines. Okay, so again, quantity, for instance, and say your labour again is 1,000. So on the previous example, we did not touch account whatsoever. It automatically came up as 2,000 sales as it's done here. However, because this is CIS, we need to change it. And it needs to be CIS labour income. Okay, so all you need to do is if you type CIS, it will come up and show you. And you just need to click that one instead. And again, on your tax rate, previous example, it automatically came up as 20% VAT. Okay, again, we need to change this. Okay, so it needs to be domestic reverse charge. So it needs to be domestic reverse charge at 20% on income, and that is the code that you need. Please do not put them as being no VAT, okay? Because that's incorrect. Domestic reverse charge, it isn't that there's no VAT on it. What is actually happening is there is VAT at 20%, but you pass on responsibility for that VAT to the contractor that you're working for, okay? Whereas no VAT means that the job that you're doing is not subject to VAT at all. So they're two completely different things. So we do need to make sure that the correct VAT rate is applied to the invoice. Okay. It's just something to remember. The other thing is as well is it becomes very difficult to correct if it's done wrong within the accounts. So it's just something to be really, really aware of. Okay. So again, then materials. So one, I mean, again, if you're wanting not to overly confuse, but say you've got materials and you're charging them 10 of them, and you know your unit price is 50. You can do it like that at quantity 10 and your unit price 50, and it will automatically calculate the correct value. But in terms of jobs that you're quoting, it's probably much easier if it's just one value. So again, we'll say your material cost was 500. Your materials, because it's not subject to CIS, just stays at the 200 sales. Okay, so you don't have to change this one, but your VAT code still needs changing to domestic reverse charge. Okay, and that's your invoice. So again, if we double check it, so the total altogether is 1,500. If you've been verified and you're subject to 20% CIS, for instance, that's how I've set this particular demo company up as, it will automatically show that CIS deduction, and then it will show the amount that your customer then owes in total. Okay, same as before, approve, and at the top here then email, and then you can email it straight out. Okay, so those are the two. That's how you create a sales invoice. That's covering basically just a straightforward standard sales invoice, and then an invoice that has got a CIS labour deduction on it and is subject to domestic reverse charge. Just to be clear on the domestic reverse charge, the domestic reverse charge only applies to invoices that are subject to CIS. Okay, so your straight sales invoices that are going to sort of an end user, so Jane, who lives down the road, they are just normal 20% VAT. Domestic reverse charge only applies where you are working as a subcontractor. Okay, so if it's CIS, then it is also a domestic reverse charge, effectively. Easiest way to remember it. So that is how you raise your sales invoices and then email them to customer. So a credit note. If for some reason you need to raise a credit note for a customer, the easiest way to do it is we go business invoices and say, for instance, this invoice that I've just raised to Boom, you want to give them a credit note. So so just go back on it. So you can navigate to any of them. Can you see how it underlines it where I basically hover on it? Effectively, that's like a link. So if you click on it, it will take you straight to that invoice. Okay. I want to create a credit note for them. So if you go on the side here where it says invoice options and you click on it, you get a little list. And if you go to add credit note and click on that. And what this does is it automatically brings in all the details. So the customer, the references, and all the details from the invoice straight into it. So you don't have to put them all in again. Okay. Then from this, you can just amend it for what information you want. So for instance, the labour's fine. So on the little cross, I'm going to delete that line and we're going to give them £250 credit note against the materials. Okay. So all I've done is overtype the unit price, £250. And again, all you do is hit approve. Okay. And what that's done is it's created a credit note and it has automatically applied it against that sales invoice. Okay. To then go to that credit note, if you can see where it's sort of underlined where it is. So again, if you click on it, and then you can email it to your customer. Okay. So that's credit notes. If you wanted to raise the vast majority of credit notes, if you were going to raise a credit note, will be against an outstanding invoice. Therefore, I would recommend very much that you use this method as opposed to just raising a credit note in isolation, because this means it makes sure that all of the details remain the same, okay, on the credit note, and it's then much easier to trace them. So instead, if you were wanting to edit an invoice or delete it completely, so for example, we will go to, so firstly, just as a point, you cannot edit or delete an invoice which has got a payment or credit note or anything already allocated against it. It won't let you. Okay, you can only delete or edit one which has nothing. Another point is this: if you have already sent your invoice to the customer, especially if it is a company or a contractor that you're sending it to, I would always recommend that if you're going to amend it, that you send a credit note as opposed to editing an invoice. This is because they've usually running an accounts department similar to what this is, and it can get very confusing because they may already have that invoice on their system. And if you just send an amended invoice, it can get very confusing because they can sometimes end up with 2 invoices on their system, etc. Whereas the credit note, it clears the first one you send and then they've got a new invoice or it amends it, basically. But if it was just going to Joe Blogs down the street, so end user, in this case, you can just edit or delete. So again, if you click on invoice options, so if you go to the invoice that you want to change, if you go to invoice options, okay, you've got void, so this completely deletes it, or you've got edit. So edit keeps the invoice, allows you to make changes. So if I click on edit, for example, I didn't add a reference in, so 48 New Street, okay, and all you need to do then is click update. Or for example, I want to put some say some extras. We've now got some materials at £500 as well. Okay, changing it and we can go update. And then again, we can re-email from the top, so we can go email and we can resend it out. So that's if you wanted to amend it. Okay. If you have raised the invoice, etc., and you want to completely delete it, so we've got invoice options, void. It will ask you to confirm. So again, if you click on it by accident, it hasn't just gone. You do have to confirm. Okay. And now it's got rid of it. And it's fully deleted it. Okay. So that is credit notes, amending, and completely deleting invoices. Please don't be afraid of asking questions. So I'm not expecting that anybody would necessarily be able to do this straight away. I have given you quite a lot of information, and especially if you're not used to using Xero or an accounts package, it can seem a bit daunting to start with. But please trust me, once you've done it a couple of times, you'll find it so easy and straightforward. I am just going to cover a couple of final points. This is more for your own sort of peace of mind, additional things that may not be relevant or you may not want to sort of get into them at this particular moment in time. And the other thing is, if there's ever anything you want me to clarify, go over again, you want a more detailed video on a specific area, you want to have a phone call, etc., then please do not be afraid of giving me a call or getting in touch. And I will help you. We can even arrange face-to-face Zoom meetings, or whatever is needed for you to feel comfortable with this process. So please don't be afraid of reaching out and getting in touch. So very quickly, just to cover, if, for example, you are working for a contractor, even customers, etc., they've got a few invoices outstanding or the late paying, etc., you can send statements. So all you need to do is, if you go back to invoices, and at the top here, you've got your new invoice, new credit note, and next to it is sent statements. So if we click on this, it will bring up a list of basically all of those that have got outstanding. Well, actually it brings up them all, but you can see which ones here have an outstanding value and those that are overdue. So you can just click on them at the side and hit email. Okay. You can select multiple ones like this and it will send them a statement. Okay. And basically a statement is a list of all the invoices that they've got, what the value is, and how much is outstanding. So for example, we can either do it as a full activity or as an outstanding. I'd recommend sending outstanding. So if I just do print now, I'll be able to show you what it looks like. So what it does is it sends them a statement and it will show them which invoices are outstanding and how much in total. So exactly like the statements that you will receive from your suppliers. Okay, so that is an additional thing that you can do. We can also set up, so if you can see here, invoice reminders, it's currently switched off. We can set it up within Xero so it automatically sends reminder emails for those invoices that are outstanding. So we can set it up so it sends emails automatically, say every 7 days, and then at 14 days, and then at 21, whatever it is that you determine that you'd like to do. So that is an additional feature that we can set up if that is of help for you. Again, just let me know. So the final thing, when I was raising the sales invoice before, I set up a new contact, Joe blog, when I was creating the actual sales invoice. And I did mention that for that, it wasn't including any sort of contact details. Okay, it is just basically the name. If you want to now add their address, etc., if you go to contacts, I'd just go all contacts. Okay, and at the top here, if you search for the person that you've created, okay, and click on it, it will then take you to their record, their contact record. So their contact record also shows all their invoices, etc. If you click on edit, you can then add any additional detail that you want to add. So for example, primary contact, email addresses, websites, company registrations, and then on the left hand side here you have got additional areas. So if you click on address, you can then add the address in. You can do it by literally putting in a postcode and it will find it for you, or you can enter it manually if you want to type it. If they are so say you hire somebody as a subcontractor, then obviously they'll be subject to CIS deductions, in which case we will need to verify them. And you can put their financial details in. So say if you want to keep a record of what their bank payment, where you're paying them to, if they're VAT registered, and we can also create defaults. So this, especially like sort of sales defaults and purchase defaults, is quite handy. So for example, how I was saying about the CIS sales income and having to change the labour to CIS sales income. If you set up a subcontractor, it's probably worth setting them up as being CIS labour income. Then it will automatically come up as CIS labour income and you don't have to remember. As I said, invoice due date, so we can set, so say your terms are 7 days. So 7 days after invoice date, we can set it up. And same with like VAT code. So again, in terms of the domestic reverse charge, we can set it up so it automatically, for that particular contact, comes through as being 20% VAT on income. So these are things just to be aware of, that we can make, you or we can make life easier for you. So that some of these things that might seem overly complicated that I've gone through about remembering the CIS code and the domestic reverse charge, we can make it easier per contact. So what I would suggest is if you're comfortable sort of picking some of these sales defaults yourself, you can do it yourself, or alternatively, email us a list of those that are, say, contractors that you want us to pre-set up as being domestic reverse charge and CIS labour, and we can go into those contacts and do this for you. Okay, so please don't be afraid of asking. And then all you would do is, once you were comfortable with what you'd set up, is save and close. So I said it would be a quick video. It has gone on a little bit longer than that. I do apologise. I just wanted to make sure that I'd sort of covered all the different areas for you. And I will just stress again, if you need any help whatsoever, please just get in touch, and I will very happily go through it with you, whether you want to do that on a one-to-one via a Zoom, or as a phone call, or even just quick questions via email. So please reach out and I can go through whatever you need. Okay, thank you very much.